Hi, I'm Barbara Leonard. I'm the head reverend over at the chapel, as what we call it, the Sinner Garden Online Chapel, and we are located in lovely Surrey in British Columbia at the corner of 64th Avenue and 146th Street. You can come and worship with us, where people honor and worship God in their own way, and we believe that all spiritual pathways lead to the same God. So just join us on Sunday morning at 11 a.m. or go online at www.innergarden.com. You can watch us on our videos, or you can find out all about all the other functions that we have throughout the week. So join us.
As proud members of our tribe, we hold many things sacred, and nothing is more important than our kids. But when we smoke around them, we put them at risk. Secondhand smoke causes low birth weight babies, sudden infant death syndrome, chronic ear infections, coronary heart disease, pneumonia, bronchitis, emphysema, asthma, and other respiratory diseases. For our kids to join in the dance, we have to hold them sacred. When you smoke, don't do it around them.
And it's the last letter of the alphabet. But as far as I'm concerned, it's still talk radio on the Z Talk Radio Network.
Ghost Riders in the Sky. Z-Talk Radio. Ghost Riders in the Sky. Z-Talk Radio. Ghost Riders in the Sky. Z-Talk Radio. You're listening to Z-Talk Radio for the next generation. And this is Between Two Worlds Radio with your host, Derrick Whiteskycloud. Healer, author, shaman, psychic medium, and paranormal investigator in beautiful Vancouver, BC, Canada. Welcoming all guests from paranormal to alternative health. And now, here's your host of Between Two Worlds Radio, Derrick Whiteskycloud.
Hey everybody, Tansi, in our language, the Métis. Tonight I have a wonderful guest, my good best friend, Dale Haggerty. He's actually lives in Vavenby, which is outside of Clearwater, which is part of BC, British Columbia, here in Canada. And Dale's residing there. He's a curator and the president of the Michif Historical Cultural Preservation Society. This man teaches the history of the Métis. He likes to share. He actually carries the part of the museum. I actually have the other part of it here up in Surrey, British Columbia. He's got the other half, and we're out there sharing our wisdom of the Métis Nation. And what's really neat about Dale, because he goes around and he meets people, talks to the elders, and learns about a lot of things that not many people do know. And so tonight we're going to be talking about our Métis history and about what we call basically the Métis means. Actually, I'll ask Dale. I'll ask all the people. Now, I do know what this all means, but let's everybody else know out there, who are the Métis and what do the Métis do? So, no further ado, I'm actually looking at my paper here. My good friend Dale Haggerty, are you there, my friend?
Hey, Tansi.
Tansi. So
you said I was going to make a little joke. Who are we? We're the comedians of Mr. Harper's government.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Thank you, Derrick, for that wonderful introduction. I'm just back here from doing a little trip for the last 4.5 months. I was working up in a little community called Isle La Crosse, Saskatchewan.
Wow,
it's right. It is quite a community. Of course, I fell in love with the community.
That's as Red River as Red River can be.
Oh, sorry, what was that, Derrick?
I said that is Red River as Red River can be.
Yeah. This community, I thought that it was where Louis Riel's parents were from. But I discovered when I got there, it was his sister that lived in that community. And she was a nun. That was in there. And so Louis Riel's sister, Sarah, is actually buried in Isle La Crosse. And I went up there to the gravesite and saw the marker, and it's quite a sight to see. And of course, I experienced doing some of the things that I'm doing now with a new career. I was teaching shop, woodwork or industrial arts, to a school, Roslyn High School.
Big shout out to Roslyn High School in Saskatchewan.
Yeah. So I was teaching the shop class for grades 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So that was quite a trick for me to do that.
So what were you teaching the kids?
Well, we were. They have a beautiful shop, and I just touched on the woodworking end of it. I let them do some projects of their own, and of course I had brought some projects with me that they had done, but I was teaching them shop safety, the use of the tools, and of course they hadn't used a lot of the tools. So, and then I introduced them to some of the tools that they could use in everyday working in the shop. So we made things like push sticks and benches and sawhorses and things like that. That was really good for them. And then, of course, then we got into some router work and some, we made some pencils and all kinds of things. A large pencil so they can, oversized pencil, like 3 feet long and 2 inches wide. And yeah, it was. I got this idea from making these pencils from the Dale's, my wife's son. He has one in our garage, and he made one when he was in woodworking in school. And of course he eventually got it and he painted it nice and blue, and then he put his name, it was called, he had just put his graphic name on there. It was Darren's graphics arts class. So
that's cool.
So yeah, it was quite a ordeal there. So, anyways, the question you asked the audience was, what is who are the half breeds and the Métis people? That's a question that I'm still trying to figure out. I think we are Canadian. We are part of the country's most important part of the history. I think we are well versed in our skills, explorers. We even got famous writers, artists, and you name it. We are, of course, we had famous leaders like Louis Riel and Gabriel Dumont, and of course we do have famous leaders today. For example, when we first wanted to get into the Constitution, there was a gentleman's name there that they worked on and talked to Mr. Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and finally they agreed that they had to include us as the third Aboriginal peoples of Canada. Of course, we're talking about the First Nation, the Inuit, and of course the Métis. Now there is 3 Aboriginal peoples.
We were recognized as a Métis nation from the year of 1982 by the Canadian federal government.
Yeah, that's when we were put into the Constitution. But as far as being recognized as a nation of people, started with his name was Cuthbert Grant. Yeah. And of course, and it was we weren't under a Canadian rule at that time. We were under a British rule. And Hudson's Bay, which was part of the the British Commonwealth and had big influences on the English. Wouldn't give the French the right to hunt and fish and get beaver and furs, and they considered their territory. And of course, there was a skirmish, and I think it was in 1815-16. It didn't last very long, but there was a few deaths, and of course, that's when the first flag. That was the first flag outside of a country not recognized, like the British ensigns and the fleur-de-lis, of course, in France. But that was the first flag that was flown, and it was flown by the Métis people to recognize that there is another nation of people here on the plain. And of course, that's when our first recognition of being recognized as a nation of people. And everybody says it was in 1867 when they brought Manitoba into the Confederation. That was just a confirmation to confirm that we were a nation of people. But it really all started in 1816.
Okay. So basically, we were part of Lower Canada. There was actually, what I understand, that we have Upper Canada, Lower Canada. So Ottawa, which is actually the head of Parliament, that's why Manitoba separated Saskatchewan, Alberta. I don't think British Columbia had anything to do with it at the time. There was not really that many people migrating there yet, mostly First Nations. But the three provinces were part of Lower Canada, so that's why a lot of people are trying to figure out how is it that our flag wasn't recognized by the British at the very beginning, because the Queen, under her Commonwealth conditions, that, like you said, 1816, they weren't recognizing us because we weren't part of Canada at the time. It was basically part of the parliamentary government. So that's why Riel was considered as a threat to Macdonald, who actually was the Prime Minister of Canada at the time. Does that make any sense, Dale?
Yeah. Before we get into, there was the upper and lower Canada were, the upper part were the two provinces were in, and of course the four provinces were New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and of course Quebec and Ontario. Well, Ontario was considered Lower Canada, not Manitoba. Manitoba was a territory.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, Manitoba was actually a territory. If you remember the history of when Hudson's Bay, Henry Hudson got lost and he ended up now they call it the Hudson's Bay, up in the north, ended up there and claiming the land. Of course, most of that where they landed was in Manitoba. And of course, he claimed the land. And that was northern Ontario, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan. And not too much yet into Alberta yet. They hadn't gotten that far. But and of course they called it the Northwest Territories.
That's right.
Yeah, and of course Canada didn't become their own country till 1867.
Okay.
They were still recognized by the British, of course. The War of 1812 with the United States, and so they still were skirmishing between France and England to who owned who and what. But when they finally got it all resolved, it was the actual French Métis the Northwest Trading Company, which was created in Quebec, was the one that was wanting to go out and explore these territories. And in then days, the Northwest Trading Companies were already had expanded already to the tips of British Columbia and northern Alberta, and of course east of that, they were starting to run into the Hudson's Bay companies, and of course this is what it was all about. The Hudson's Bay Company wouldn't buy the furs from the trappers, and they were cheating the First Nation people of money and goods and stuff like this, and it's that's why, you know, as I'd say as a joke, is you know, a little competition, you know, into the world of the retail market. It doesn't hurt anybody, right? So so anyways, there was a little bit of a skirmish between who owned the rights to the land, and of course who could go and hunt and fish into the things and start expanding, because there was just as many forts being opened by the Northwest Trading Company as Hudson's Bay, and of course they were accepting furs from anybody, and of course that was the market in them days. That was the currency, as a matter of fact. That was Canada's first currency, was the trading beads and the furs, and you know, and then eventually Hudson's Bay came out with tokens, but only the tokens were, you know, given because they would be replacements for if they didn't need anything for flour and sugars and blankets and stuff like that. They had enough. Then when they needed to go to a fort in the wintertime, they had these tokens which they could turn in and get more goods for them. So,
when did the trade beads ever come in on this one?
The trade beads were, I think the trade beads started a long time ago. They got this idea when North America was being discovered by the Columbians, Christopher Columbus, and on the East Coast they spotted something on the explorers' necks. Of course, they all wore these beads and jewelry and stuff like this, and of course most of the beads and were made or handmade from sea animals and sea creatures and shells and stuff like that. So, but when these beautiful red beads came into existence, they started trading things for them. Of course, they were trading furs for the beads, and as soon as they had enough beads, they were starting to trade for axes and pots and pans and things like that. Of course, that was the time. Believe it or not, you know, there is two of the notable beads that are noted are the Hudson's Bay trading bead, which is called a white heart, which is a red bead with a white center in it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell a real authentic trade beads because there was never one bead made the same, because they were all handmade. Today, glass beading is all punched out with a machine, and they're consistent. You know, they're always the same size, same weight, same consistency. So, but when you find a set of trade beads, you'll see larger ones and smaller ones, and some are perfectly round, some are not, some are flatter, some are more larger holes and smaller holes. And the other bead basically was from Russia, and most of the beads were actually made in these countries because the things, but it's called a blue. Help me out, Derrick. It's the blue Russian trade bead.
Yeah.
And of course, what they did was when they were making these beads, some of them were rounded and some were not. Some were actually made to look like the diamonds, where they would have flat edges on them. So you could, if you find a bunch of those are the really older ones, and they're very beautiful. They're cobalt blue, and they're very hard to find, and very expensive.
They're valuable for the Métis, but I've actually had people say to me, "Well, if they find these trade beads, are they worth a lot of money?" To us, they are to us within our own community, but if you try to sell them to a regular person, those people don't see it as having any value.
Yeah, it's more of a
historical.
Yeah, there you go. It's a historical heirloom to us.
Yeah,
and they don't appreciate the true value of it is. It's like the money, but the coins, and for example, you can mint 20 million of these coins, and yet then you can mint another 25 billion of these coins. Well, the coin that's going to be the rarest is the one that was only minted with the smallest mintage. Yeah. And that's where we get our historical value to them. So there's a history behind it which can relate to our ancestors and our grandparents and so on. So there you go. That's basically the sort of where we are in our history sort of thing. So.
We're gonna go into a break, folks. You're listening to Between Two Worlds Radio on the Z-Talk Radio Network, and my guest is my good friend Dale Haggerty. He's the curator of the Michif Métis Museum, and we're gonna have some fun. So we'll be right, guys. We'll be right back.
Coffee. I would really love one. Hey folks, this is Marina. I'm Derrick's wife, and he'll be right back after this break.
Derrick Whiteskycloud's son, and you're listening to Z-Talk Radio Network. And by the way, Dad, it's been a while since I kicked your butt at a game of pool.
A star for the Night Foundation.
Star for the Night Kids. You're on in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Seriously ill children have their dreams come true by sharing the spotlight with their favorite celebrity. Kids are DJs interviewing movie stars on nationwide
DJs
radio.
interviewing Mike Myers.
We love you, Mike. Peace, baby.
Peace, and out to you all.
Melissa Joan Hart. Nikki Cox.
It was a lot of fun, and thanks for having me.
Mark Steines. Ben Stiller.
Bye, Ben.
Bye, guys.
My idol.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Andy Garcia. Rick Springfield.
We love you, Rick.
Love you too, guys.
Dreams become reality. Limos, makeovers, special new outfits, dinner, and off to share the spotlight.
Hi everyone, it's Karen Frazier at Paranormal Underground.
And I'm Rick Hale, Paranormal Underground writer.
We're here to invite you to explore the unexplained with Paranormal Underground Radio, live and on the air.
Join us every Thursday night for paranormal talk and great guests from 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time on ztalkradio.com.
Do you believe in ghosts? Do you think Bigfoot is real? Do you suspect that your neighbor is really Val Tor, leader of the lizard people of Bendar 3? Well, Dr. Dim doesn't, and he'll tell you why when you tune in to Dimland Radio Saturday nights, 11 Central, midnight Eastern on Z-Talk Radio Network. It's an hour of science promotion, pop culture rants, personal observation, and of course, skepticism. Dr. Dim might even have a guest or two. Join Jim, Dr. Dim Fitzsimmons, Saturday nights, 11 Central, midnight Eastern for Dimland Radio on Z-Talk Radio Network.
Hello there, I'm Dr. Nigel Bilkington, Chief of Medicine at General American Hospital. Now, you were in a car crash and the injuries you sustained are quite expensive. Sorry, slip of the tongue there. Yes, are quite extensive. But after a very pricey surgery, sorry, a very dicey surgery, you're going to be just fine. In fact, you should be homeless soon. Home soon, sorry, you should be home soon.
Planning a trip to the U.S.? Call Pacific Blue Cross and get travel insurance by the name trusted around the world. Phone 1-800-USE-BLUE.
When the voyageurs first came, ils n'attendaient pas d'être pères. Sur une vieille terre, ils travaillaient si fort, ils étaient si fiers of their newfound family, dont je suis sœur, tu es frère. Look in these Métis eyes, hold these Métis hands. We're all held together by love, by this land. We are family. We're all family. When the winds of change were upon them, the ladies braced the wind. They opened up their hearts and homes and took the strangers in. Elles prévoyaient l'avenir. They saw their babies' eyes, burnt wood faces under prairie skies. Look in these Métis eyes, hold these Métis hands. We're all held together by love, by this land. We are
Hey, we're back, folks. You're listening to Between Two Worlds Radio and the Z-Talk Radio Network, and our singer, her name is Andrea Menard. The song's called Métis Hands. If you want to order that, you can order it online. You can go on YouTube if you want to. Let's see if it's there. It's beautiful music. My guest tonight is Dale Haggerty of the Michif Historical Cultural Preservation Society, which is the Michif Métis Museum. We are the half-breeds, folks. Half Aboriginal and half European blood. I was actually invited to participate as one of the representatives for the Eurofest just this last June, early part of June, or sorry, May, I should say, late part of May, and I was very honored to be asked to be part of this, and so I set up our museum there at the event, and it was a lot of fun being participant as one of the European people. And the reason why we were asked to be there because we were considered the first peoples, or the first Europeans, at this event. So I mean, basically, even though there were all European countries there, like there was like Italy and Ukraine, Russia, Slovakia, that sort of thing. All those countries are there, and then they included us because we were considered the first Europeans before the the countries themselves came across into Canada and or United States, because we guess a lot of us, that's what people did. They became the first Europeans into a country that was welcoming for everybody. So without no any further ado, our good friend Dale Haggerty, you there, my friend?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Good, yeah.
I just, while you were in the commercial, by the way, the music is really good.
Thank you.
You've really got some really nice, talented singers coming on and playing some nice songs for us nowadays.
Yeah. Well, we got some.
I just got a phone call from a good friend of ours, and she just came out of surgery. Her name is Shirley Karsh. She fell and broke her hip just on her day of her birthday.
Oh my God!
And I just got a phone call to, I want to wish her all the best, and if she's listening to us on the radio, and she came out of surgery okay. So she actually made the phone call to a good friend of ours, the Reverend Barbara Leonard, in Vancouver there in Surrey, to let us know that she's okay, and she's looking forward to seeing us when we come down to the coast.
Yeah. How old is Shirley now? She's in her 80s. 86 or 88?
82.
I think she'll give me a heck if I said she was in her 80s, late 80s. I don't know.
I think Fred is becoming 90, and I think he's just a year older than my mom. No, a year younger than my mom.
Yeah.
My mom. And so, anyways, yeah. So, getting back to your program here, that's what I needed to say, and thank you very much for having me on again, Derrick.
No problem. What I was going to ask you, my friend, is actually, let's talk about the voyageurs, the Métis voyageurs. Now, a lot of people may not know what a voyageur is. Not a voyeur, folks, a voyageur. Because I had someone say, oh, a voyeur? No, a voyageur. And what did the Métis do that were actually the voyageurs?
Well, I think the voyageurs were, like French Canadian, and of course, what they would do is the original voyageurs came from Manitoba, from northern Quebec, and they would go and they opened up the trade routes for Canada, and open up the new country, in which we called new country would be like Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. Now you got to remember, the British in BC here were already starting to come in from the California, Oregon, and they were starting to also come in from the other side, on the Pacific side. The ships were starting to sail around and come in and discover the new lands, and of course, this is what was happening. These voyageurs were there are three parts of the canoe, and the canoe usually were to consist of about a 30 foot to possibly 38 feet long.
Wow.
And these were huge, beautiful birch bark canoes made from these. And of course, you have the steersman, you have the middleman, and you have the bowsman. And those were the most important parts of the boat. Of course, the steerer, that's what they call the steerman. They would be looking after going down the rapids, and not a lot of them went down rapids. Mm-hmm. Like some of the pictures there, where in the beginning they might have done that, and then as soon as they found an easier route, they sure went down the easier route. And of course, what they would do as soon as they would bring goods from northern Quebec City, Montreal, and then they would bring them down. They would go into the Great Lakes, and then they would head down some of these rivers, heading down to break open new territories. Mm-hmm. And of course, they would create forts at these areas, and of course, they would use this goods to trade with the new community. Of course, they're trying to expand a nation, the British nation and the French nation. So they were trying to build a country. And of course, the farther they went in, the more they could bring travelers and new families and to start expanding the country, of course. Yeah, and my great-grandfather, Isidore Villeneuve, he was a voyageur. He worked for the Hudson's Bay Company. I found a document where he, when he was getting script land, he had to, they asked him what his occupation was, and of course it's on the document, on the script, that he worked for the Hudson's Bay as a voyageur, not a voyeur.
Yeah, voyageur.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of houses so they could go doing that other thing in them days. So yeah, that's what my interpretation of a voyageur is that they were the beginnings of the explorers. They would actually bring these notable people to map out new routes and stuff like that, but they were the explorers more than these famous people. Like David Thompson, there's no slagging him around. I mean, he was a great explorer for his journals and stuff like this. Alexander Henry Jr. and Sr. were very good explorers. Alexander Mackenzie. But these guys didn't get to map these countries unless it was the guys that was behind them. They have a coach, and you got the football team.
Yeah.
Well, the football team does most of the work, but there's the guy that's getting all the credit, saying, "Oh, go out there and beat somebody's brains out to get the football," sort of thing, But they don't give enough credit for the Métis that opened up this land, and they brought them into trouble. They could speak the languages of the First Nation, so that meant that they could cross territories without having to go through skirmishes. And don't say that the Métis and the First Nation people didn't have skirmishes. They had their arguments just like everybody else. They're human beings, and there was the odd skirmish, but I mean that was quite easily settled afterwards, and through negotiations and stuff like this, and smoking a peace pipe, and that's smoking the peace pipe was a very sacred thing in them days. It was smoking of the pipe was bringing trust, and you wouldn't go back on it, like most of the government did in them days. But the Métis were very true to our First Nation brothers. A lot of marriages were intermarriage through the First Nation and the French, which created this new language, or a new nation of people. And, of course, yes, we did have our own language. We took a little bit of the Cree and we mixed it a little with the English and mixed it a little bit with the French and used our language to communicate, and it seemed to do very well for ourselves.
Yeah, so we spoke Michif, which actually is not said mischief, folks. It's called Michif, M-I-C-H-I-F. And what I found out, and when I was up in northern Alberta, and me working on the reservations, and I've learned a lot from our Métis people in different areas, and they've told me that there's different dialects of the Métis. Even there in the language itself, there are different dialects. You can tell when they're from Saskatchewan, one's from Alberta, and different territories. It's interesting how I didn't realize that. I thought it was just like, if you spoke Cree, you spoke Cree, or if you spoke Lakota, you spoke Lakota. The different dialects, they have a different sound effect, and they can pretty well, you can tell what area that person's from. It's really interesting. I didn't know that until just recently.
Yeah, I was very lucky. There was a gentleman that he's the principal, Vince Anaheim, and he wrote 2 actual Michif language books. So there is a difference, and I asked him that, and he just said some areas were more heavily French areas, so they would use a lot more French words to mix, and of course, we have the Ojibwe people that we keep forgetting that they were part of our heritage as well, not just the Cree. I mean, and there's different Crees. There's the Northern Cree, there's the Prairie Cree, and and they had their different languages. So, it all depends on who was talking, and where there was a more of a dominant of the people. So if they were more of a like in Isle of the Cross, for example, it's a very northern Cree people up there. Mm-hmm. So their dialect would be the Michif language there would reflect their language up there too, because that's who they're talking to when they're doing their transactions and stuff like that. So Manitoba is there's a lot of Manitoba, especially around Winnipeg and lower. There's a lot of French. It was a very well known that the French were down there, and they have their own language, which we call the Michif language.
Yes.
And believe it or not, the Michif language is also spoken in Ontario and Quebec, and then there's the French Michif in New Brunswick. That's where it first started more there, because that's where the French people were. In New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, those were the first provinces that were settled in, where the sailors would come off the boats and they would and then they would find their that they didn't want to go back, so they would stay and they would break the land and they would find a country wife, which would be First Nation. And of course, when you have very little protection of making babies, of course you're going to create a new nation of people, and that's how it was all done. So
yeah.
But yes, you're right. Even northern Alberta, there's Iroquois, believe it or not, in northern Alberta.
Yes, that I do. Yes.
You noticed that, didn't you?
Oh yeah,
When you were there.
Yeah.
And of course, these northern people spoke another different language as well. So you know how they all have to communicate, sort of thing. So because they were trading, I mean, you're a businessman and you've got a business and you're trying to get furs and from these, and so you're going to learn the fastest way to communicate, right? So yeah, so that's why the language was created. It was our own language that was created by our elders, and we're losing our language. I wish that especially here in BC and in some of Alberta areas, they're starting to lose their people. They're losing it. But
yeah,
do you know that let's talk about this language. When I was in La Crosse, they teach the Michif language in actually the school system.
Yeah.
The actual school system had a program where they had their own Michif language program, and the teachers, and they would be walking along the hallway. They would be talking Michif. So it wasn't even some of the people that would be coming into the high schools and the parents, they would talk the Michif language. And it was meant to do that so the kids could catch on.
Yeah.
Because as long as you're talking a language, you could catch on to a language. But if you don't catch on to a language, it's very hard, and you can lose it very quickly. Like my mom, for example. My mom, when she came from back, she could still understand a little bit of the Michif words. But then if you're not talking it and listening to it, you tend to lose that language. You tend to lose it. You'll hear more English than you would her language, and the only time maybe she heard it is maybe when she talked to her brother and or her sister in Saskatchewan, sort of thing, or Alberta.
I know you guys got a good friend by the name of Bill out in your area, living out in your area. Have they ever attempted to talk to your mom in the Michif, or if he did know that language, like to see if she would respond?
Bill, sorry.
Your friend Bill. Is it?
No, mom. Right now, my mom is not doing very well. Matter of fact, she's in the actual hospital, and we actually thought we were losing her. But mom doesn't talk the language anymore. If you talk to her, you'd have to talk to her quite fluidly, and she might understand, but no, she doesn't talk it very much. She's really lost it. It's unfortunately because that's one of the things that if we would have learned the Michif language as us growing up as kids, there was a good possibility that we could have gotten to learn French a lot easier, because the French, where my mom was, there was a dominance of French that they talked. So there would have been good possibility that we could have caught on to the French language and communicate very well. So, but no, I don't think well, since I've been back, I haven't heard anybody talk the Michif language. And
yeah. When you're up there, have you heard it at all around in your area, where the guys trying to get you to learn? When you're up in Isle La Crosse?
Oh yeah, they try to teach me, but like I said, and I apologize to them, because I says it's very difficult for us as we get older. believe it or not, if I would have probably stayed up there, a lot longer, a couple, 2 or 3 years, I might have caught on to the language. It was, I could have taken that time and then learned it, a little bit. They have great teachers there, and they have a great program up there, and it's, we all talk about our struggling students up there, but there's I think they have a very, very cool, very open-minded way of teaching. They bring in their past. They still teach the kids, like I says, their language. They were teaching fiddling. They were even dramatizing that they put a play together while I was up there, and it was they used the Robin Hood theme, but what they did was at the very end they sort of used the Michif or the Métis things for their acting sort of thing. Oh yeah, it was really cool. It was like they wore sashes. They would talk about elders and Mushim and Cookums and stuff like that, where it was related. They used a trapper's tent for their forest. It was really amazing. A matter of fact, I actually lent them some of the props. I lent them a capote that they wore and some leather bags, and of course I also lent them my raccoon hat. So it was quite cool. So yeah. But this school that I was at was it's got its own school district. It's all run by the community. It's run by the town, and it's got their own great people running it. And if there was ever a chance of me going back there, I would jump at the chance. I'm telling you right now, it was quite an experience.
Cool. Well, we're at the top of the hour, guys, and you're listening to Between Two Worlds Radio. Dale, you just take a couple minutes of your time and grab yourself a coffee or something. We're going to go into break, folks, top of the hour as is, and you're listening to Between Two Worlds Radio, and my guest is Dale Haggerty, the curator of the Michif Historical Cultural Preservation Society. After the hour of a commercial, we're going to come back. We're going to be talking about the Red River Cart, and this is how they pioneered across the land, and we'll be describing it to you on radio. It's hard to actually describe it to you. We don't have it on a television set, so we're going to describe it to you on radio, so we'll be right back. The song you're hearing now, folks, is called the Red River Jig.
Hey, this is Danny Potts from the Kentucky Ghost Chasers, and you're listening to Z-Talk Radio.
My name Jose Manis. I'm to introduce to you the Pistoles. Oh, you call pistols. The Paranormal Investigation St. Lawrence Seaway. They are on Sunday between 5 and 7 p.m. Eastern on the Z Talk Radio Network. Arriba, I need my hacienda. Where's my tequila? I see you Sunday.
Tengo yo cuando me inspiro algo con satisfacción. Tengo yo cuando me inspiro algo con...
Ghosts,
Loch Ness,
UFOs,
crop circles,
Bigfoot,
vampires,
demons,
banshees,
Atlantis,
shadow people,
werewolves,
Bermuda Triangle.
All topics on Paradigm Shift,
which is on Fridays at 11 p.m. Eastern on ztalkradio.com.
The force is strong with this one.
Join us here on Z-Talk Radio Network for Live with Belle Salisbury and co-host Gina Wedlake. You can catch them live every Wednesday night from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Belle Salisbury is a professional psychic medium with a love for teaching others. Each week on Live with Belle Salisbury, Belle and Gina will talk about various metaphysical topics to help educate the inquisitive mind. Belle will also talk about the current missing person cases she is working on by bringing in guest psychics along with their family members to help resolve and bring some closure to the families. And don't miss out on a live on-the-air psychic reading with Belle Salisbury. That's every Wednesday night from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. For more information about Belle Salisbury, visit her website at bellesalisbury.com.
Far from the city, where the Lorax roams free, is the home of a magical truffle of trees. They grow happy and healthy and thick as you please, just waiting for visits from yous and from me's. Whoa. In a place you will love, with things you'll adore us. It's a magical spot. We call it the forest.
Look, everyone here needs the trees.
And who are you?
Wait, I'm the Lorax, guardian of the forest. I speak for the trees.
Visit the animals. Come see the plants. From the mighty sequoia to the tiniest ants. Discover its beauty. Take time to relax. See brown barbaloots or even the Lorax.
I feel so alive. I just like hearing you say it.
The forest is there for you to explore. So come once to see it, then come back lots more. Visit discovertheforest.org. This message has been brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Peanuts, popcorn, ice cold drinks.
Z-Talk Radio Network will be right back with your show host, Derrick Whiteskycloud, on Between Two Worlds Radio after this short intermission on Z-Talk Radio.
Google checkout. One identity, one password, one mind-blowing idea.
You love shopping online and saving your time. Got too many passwords are blowing your mind. Can't remember who you are, so you gotta stop. Google checkout is here. It's a one-password shop. Check out.
Google checkout.
Check it out.
Google checkout. One identity, one password. Check it out at google.com.
Owie, awesome, free. Hey guys, it's me, Sophie. I'm here with Arnie and Brunel, Sally and Pat. We are listening to Verbal Origami. Are you ready for the most audacious, electric, funny show ever to defecate Sunday nights? Great. Then come on over to Verbal Origami on Z-Talk Radio, Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. Oh yeah, and DK will be there too. That's Verbal Origami, Sunday nights on Z-Talk Radio. Shell's butt. Nano.
Are ye
plagued by foreclosure? Well, here at Jim Ladd and Matey, we can stop your foreclosure now. We're a mortgage rescue company, and for the small fee of everything you hold dear, we will negotiate with your lender on your behalf. Call Jim Ladd and Matey at 1-800-YAR-YAR. That's 1-800-YAR. YAR.
If you're facing foreclosure, talk to the right people. Speak with HUD-approved housing counselors free of charge at 888-995-HOPE. Brought to you by NeighborWorks America and the Ad Council.
Hey-ha! This is called Jimmy's Breakdown by J.J. LaValle. Listen to that fiddle. That's what us Métis are all about. When we play the fiddle, we jig, dance all day and dance all night. Take all the furniture, put it outside of your house, and you dance all day and dance all night with all the relatives and the family in the neighborhood. That's what it's all about. Ah, yes. That feel good there, Dale?
Yeah. I was going to just tell you also, we have a very famous fiddler that actually was teaching at Ella Lacrosse School. If I say Ella Lacrosse, it's you almost got to get used to saying it a few times before you even actually get the name right. It's Isla Lacrosse, and but the famous fiddler that I had the privilege of meeting was John Arcan.
Oh yeah, he's very famous.
And he teaches the grades. He actually goes into the elementary school and he teaches the kids in the elementary level, and then he comes in and then he teaches the kids in the high school. It was absolutely breathtaking listening to him and teaching his kids, and and I had a good conversation about the kids today. He was saying that the kids, why they don't do the things like we do is because I think sometimes we're putting too much pressure on our kids, to keep our tradition alive, instead of doing it, in a reasonable time, or sort of, I know we're pushing sometimes our kids too much to learn. For example, I had this young lady. She was into everything. She was talking the Michif language, and then she was talking, learning to fiddle, and then learning to jig. And it was like, this was all at school, and it put a lot of pressure on her. And John could see that. He says that most of the kids, they drop out because they feel that they're not dedicating too much time to it. So he sort of changed his way of thinking of asking kids to fiddle, and then he was reaching out to the younger kids to do this fiddling, and then they would go out and then they have the parents, more like giving them more of an encouragement. But it was great listening to Mr. Arcan you know, as a normal person, talking to him, you know, not just seeing him on the stage all the time playing the fiddle. You know, you can actually sit down and chat with him, right? You know, as a grandparent himself, sort of thing. So, and his big fiddle fest is coming up soon. I don't have exactly the days, but I will. I think I emailed you the dates one time there, and you can maybe one time send a spiel out for him.
Sure, I can do that.
For me. Yeah, so.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk about the history of, besides the history of the Métis, but I want to talk about one of the areas of history of Métis is actually the main historical traveler was the Red River Cart. If you want to describe that to the public, what its purpose was, that was actually one of the very first vehicles that carried our goods.
Yeah, well, you know, you got to remember now they're all starting to congregate in Manitoba, and again we're going with the carts, you know, and Manitoba, Saskatchewan there's a lot of, especially up north, there's a lot of lakes and creeks. You know, they don't exaggerate when they say, you know, Manitoba's a land of 1,000 lakes. It's not. It's true. So, but they could only go so far with these canoes, right? They would use canoes to go so far, and then from there was, you know, they'd have to hit the North Saskatchewan somehow, but then the North Saskatchewan would only go so far, but from there then they would have to go into the prairies where it's all land. So what they started to do is they figured, well, maybe it's time they started using a different method of transporting their people. And they created a cart. Now you got to remember, England and France already had carts, you know, to do their work at cobblestones and stuff like that. Well, here was a little bit different, because the carts that you see in France and Belgium and Europe were smaller wheels. And so the Métis came up with an idea. Of course, you know, Métis people were very resourceful. I mean, they weren't just explorers. They were also, you know, entrepreneurs and tradespeople, and they're the people of their own, as we say. They could create their own employment, sort of thing. So they looked at the wheel system, and of course, you know, you're looking at Canada. It hasn't got the steel mills and all the industry that's going on in Europe. I mean, we've got a fresh new country here, you know. So they're going to make this cart, and they're going to, you know, like nails. What was a nail here? They didn't even know what a nail was. So what they did was they started using pins. You know, they would start using pegs, you know, oak pegs to put things together. So they're building this cart, and they're going, oh well, now let's look at our land and look, you know, they've already been back there and fun. So they thought, well, they're going to create a wheel, and they're going to go over a creek. So as soon as the cart wheel hits the beginning of the creek, which has got a little rut in it, like a pothole, by the time the wheel hits the other side, it's not even going to notice the pot. It'll just roll in and roll out, and nobody will know the difference. Well, hey, that was a great idea with the larger wheels. But they were going a little bit farther than that. Now they were coming to some creeks now that they had to float. How are we going to get across these large ravines and creeks and stuff like this? So they created so that the wheels could come off. They would be loaded with 4 maybe 600 pounds of goods. You know, they would unload the cart, take the wheels out. They would strap a hide, preferably moose, smoked. You know, smoking would would protect the water from doing it. Strap it to the wheels, and then strap these wheels underneath the cart. And then they would float these things. They would send their guy across and their animals. The animals would go across, and then they would have a rope, and they would pull these carts across with the goods on top of it. So they would float the goods across these ravines and large creeks and small rivers. And then when they get to the other end, they would take the hide out, of course, dry it while they're doing it, and then they would put the wheels back on, put the animals, and just continue going without even stopping. Now, most of the time that the carts were being used, they would make they would do, I'd say 11 miles. They would possibly do, like they would canoe for 11 miles. So they would possibly do the same with the animal, and then they would bed down for the night. And of course, what they would do is they would sleep just underneath the cart, right? Like a tent. It was large enough with the wheels that you could put the whole family underneath the cart and sleep. Put the hides over the edges and protect it from all the elements, and there you go. So they had their bedding and everything all made for these long trips, you know. And they would go from, let's say, Manitoba, let's say Fort Garry, for example. The first place they might reach would be Fort Ellis, and that would be at the tip of, at the edge of Saskatchewan and Manitoba border. And then from there, they would probably hit another little fort, and eventually they would end up in Fort Carleton, Saskatchewan, and on and on and on, and then eventually they would end up in Fort Saskatchewan, and then North Battleford, and all these other little communities they would be going, and of course they would be using the carts, and they would be using the canoes as well. So they would bring explorers across. They would bring new families across to settle the land. They would go from fort to fort to fort. They would bring goods from fort, and on the way back, they would bring the furs back to the big cities, you know, Montreal, and send them on the ships there. There you go. So, but yeah, it was a creation of that was created by our Métis people. That it was a cart that was made for the elements of North America, you know, and of course, you know, as soon as they reached the mountains, they would find an easier way to get through the mountains, you know. I have never known that there was carts on the west coast, but up in the northern country, I don't see why not, because there's not that many mountains up there, and if they were, they would be finding the passes just like as if they were exploring. So, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about our York boats? Now, people may not know what a York boat is, but even though they were known as the voyageurs, but also they carried this other type of boat. They carried down the portages, the larger rivers, and the Métis are also very famous for. Are they the only people that actually carried the goods down the York boats, or were there other people that helped to do this work?
No, the York boat. Sorry,
York boat.
Boat. I'm tongue-tied here. The boat was the York boat was a very flat bottom boat, and what the point of that is because some of the lakes were very shallow. And being as wide as it was and as long as it was, and don't say it wasn't heavy, it would still float above the water line. So again, they could carry passengers, they could carry the goods that they needed to go from fort to fort. And a lot of the York boats were basically used in the lakes. And one of the most famous lake is Lake Winnipeg. And, you know, where they had to portage these things was they would, the boat was impossible. There was, it came to an end, and so they would go, and they knew how to get around it. They would actually cut a trail and roll, put the logs on it, and actually roll these things, believe it or not, on the land, and roll these around rapids and areas where the boats couldn't go, and eventually end up back into another lake and continue down the lakes. And they would do this. They could possibly do this 4, maybe even 5 or 6 times. But they got so used to it that when the next boat came along, or the trail was already broke, the logs were already there. It was just a matter of just pushing. And believe me, these guys were tough as nails. They were small people that were that were on the boats. But boy, were they ever tough as nails. They would have to carry their goods on a certain amount would be pushing the boat, and some of them would be pulling the boat, and the rest of the crew would be carrying the goods around on their back, and that's how they did it. They did an actual reenactment of it. I'd say about maybe 6 or 7, maybe even longer than that, 8 years ago, and they were showing how hard it was for them to actually do this. And a matter of fact, when they did this, they actually discovered an area in northern Manitoba where they actually found the original tracks where the boats were actually pulled on. The logs were still in place. Of course, they were all deteriorated, but they just replaced them with new lumber and logs, and just continued it. And some of the comments says that they don't even know how these men could survive the actual trips themselves, but they did, and no credit went to them for all of the hard work that they discovered this land for.
Well, I remember hearing stories about the voyagers that did work the York boats. A lot of them some of them actually had died, thrown overboard, or the goods would actually fall on top of them while they were trying to go down the harder rapids. And
oh yeah, there was lots of deaths in theirs, and if they fell out of the boat, they fell out of the boat and they couldn't recover them, but if they did, they would be there. If they really would have looked a lot harder than they did, they could have possibly even found maybe bodies that were actually buried, and through this trek that they found, this passageway that they had discovered.
Yes.
And you're talking about men, they could have died of scurvy. There was lots of bugs then, black flies, mosquitoes. They could have died of dysentery and, malaria and stuff like that too. But Yeah, it was a hard job. You know, if you did that, you know, your lifespan was probably, you know, at the most 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
You know, and then that was enough, right?
Mm-hmm. A lot of them actually retired quite, I mean, at the age of around 40, that's all they can actually handle their lives up to 40, 45. To them, that was quite old.
Oh, yeah. That's when a lot of them, you know, would stay behind and find a country wife. And when we say a country wife, like a First Nation wife or something like that, and, you know, and decide to settle into the area that they did.
Well, let's talk about the trade, the fur trade, Dale. You know, like for example, I mean, we talk about the fur trade, like we talk about, you know, where the Métis were trapping for beaver, and how did a trapper ever get? I mean, let's put it this way: how much would it cost him to buy a rifle back then?
That was a very expensive. It was a very expensive item, but the Métis didn't get. They didn't get shafted like the First Nation guys did. And let me give you an example. Like I heard the story from one of the elders that one of the clerks at a small trading post was getting rifles. Of course, they were black powder rifles, and of course, you know, these rifles were with the barrels being so long. So he made a request that he get them to make barrels longer, like an extra 6 or 8 inches. And of course, how they would get the rifles was they would actually stack pelts one on top of each other. And when it reached the top of the rifle, that was the cost of that rifle.
Whoa.
And of course, they were extending it another 6 inches, which didn't do any difference to the barrel or any difference to the shot. So they were cheating them. And another way they would cheat the First Nation people, not so much the Métis, because of course, you know, you got to remember, Métis had access to the fort, so they had access for information. They had access to getting goods, you know. So they were not as stupid as, you know, the people thought they were. You know, just because he's a dumb half breed, he doesn't know what he's doing. But they were pretty smart, you know. You know, so what they would do is they would count furs. You know, they would say, okay, there's 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and then they'd say, oh, by the way, you know, we don't have any more flour, and then they would go 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and they would do this, of course. And, of course, the Métis found out about how they were cheating them because they were at the store at the time, and so, of course, you know, a lot of them were married, intermarriage through brothers and cousins and stuff like this. So what they did to this store man, they got him out there and they eventually got him inside the little cabin, trading cabin, and they nailed it shut, or they shut it so he couldn't get out, and they lit the trading post on fire. And, of course, that was the end of that, the cheating. And, of course, this is one of the things that was being done on a regular basis. So the actual Hudson's Bay did not actually know a lot of things that were going on because they were hiring these guys to look after the forts. You know, there's a name they used to call them, caretakers or governors or whatever they would call them. And they would be cheating the actual First Nation. They wouldn't give them their proper bacon. They would cheat them on the weight of this and weight of that. Well, this is where the Métis were starting to help the First Nation people out, saying, hey, you're being ripped off, and that's what was happening. Hudson's Bay, the company had they were a corporation. They didn't care. They were greedy. They didn't care. They were lords, were wearing these beautiful hats back in England, and they didn't care, who was sacrificing what for what. You know what I'm saying? So
they were wearing the beaver hats. They took the hair off of them, and they wore beaver hats. And beaver back then was very, very expensive.
Oh yeah. Oh, and well, hey, put it this way. You would take that 6 inches of extra pelts from things that could possibly buy you as a merchant probably 40 rifles. You see what I'm saying? How they were cheating them?
What about the trade blankets? We always hear about the Hudson's Bay blankets.
Yes. What about them?
Well, we talk about the beaver trade. I mean, you remember you look at the Hudson's Bay blankets, and they always show you those lines on the side, and everyone's been curious, the certain lines they have on the side of the blanket, like, you'll see 3 or 3.5 or 4 lines, those little black lines. Do you know any knowledge of what those represent? And people used to say one line represents a beaver or muskrat or whatever. They're not. I mean, what would you think that would be considered?
Well, my interpretation of the lines was, let's say if it had 3.5 lines on the blanket, I have a couple, matter of fact, it would cost to buy that blanket 3.5 pelts of beaver. Of course, beavers weren't sold in halves. So what it would be sold, it would be 3 large beaver pelts and 1 small one. And that would buy you a blanket. So if you needed, blankets for everybody, you have 16 kids and whatever, so it would cost you, for example, probably about 40 to 50 pelts of beaver to get the blankets for you guys, because of course that's when they were starting to bring in the wool, of course, for the blankets. Anything, the beaver pelt which was the money, was being traded, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they wanted beads, for example, they would trade for a pelt to get beads, or cloth, or thread, silk threads, and you got to remember, a lot of the First Nation people did not use threads. It was a lot of them were Métis that used threads because they had that knowledge. They had the knowledge from the European side of their heritage, right? So and it was being taught to them. So, some of these nuns, there was they call them the Grey Nuns, were teaching the First Nation Métis women how to use the threads and the needles and stuff like that. But if they were not close to a big community, small communities, if they would use whatever they used, right?
Mm-hmm.
To do their jackets and repairing theirs, but they would use a lot of hides and sinew, and they would use deer animals to make their own needles and stuff like that. So, but you talk about the trading. The beaver pelt was the main commodity in them days, but that didn't mean that that other furs were involved. There was mink, there was lynx, there was foxes, and there's a variety of foxes, white foxes, the gray foxes. you know, the brown foxes, you know, and the other animals, the hides, for example, moose hide, and was sold as leather. Deer was also sold as leather. I mean, but they had processed it. They would smoke it, and they would, but not too much of that. But you know, like the bear furs, they would be used, and you know, and stuff like that. And that was money. That was lots of money them days.
We're going to go in the commercial, Dale. Just hang on tight, my friend. Just relax. And this information is absolutely just phenomenal. Our listeners on the Z-Talk Radio chat room are just totally astounded. Their ears are wide open because they couldn't believe how much history there is regarding who we are as a Métis Nation. We'll be right back, folks.
MC, and you're listening to Derrick Whiteskycloud between Two Worlds Radio on ztalkradio.com.
Hello there, I'm Dr. Nigel Bilkington, Chief of Medicine at General American Hospital. Now, you've been placed under quarantine with a rare exotic disease, but the good news is that it is billable. My mistake. I meant to say that your rare, exorbitantly priced disease is curable. It's not billable, obviously, because you'll have to pay up front. But don't worry, we're going to get rid of your cash. Sorry, we're going to get rid of your rash.
Planning a trip to the U.S.? Call Pacific Blue Cross and get travel insurance by the name trusted around the world. Phone 1-800-USE-BLUE.
We just keep getting better, can lose someday. We're moving up, take a look at us now. Our cool digs have really kicked up the wow. The smart choice is Kamloops Hyundai. The right people, the right price. Kamloops Hyundai's gonna treat you right. It's gonna be a fun day in my Hyundai. We just keep getting better, Kamloops Hyundai.
Well, I'll be hornswoggled.
You're listening to Z-Talk Radio Network.
You don't say. Oh, what? You think you went off to college or something?
On ztalkradio.com.
That's the most amazing thing since Grandma survived the outhouse incident.
Here. Derrick will be right back after he gets my coffee.
What do you do when you're lonely on a Saturday night? You can join me and listen to the two hottest guys on ztalkradio.com, Joe and Kale, The Skeptical Edge, Saturdays, 8 p.m. Eastern.
I'm Sarah. I'm Ellen. One night, I was at a bar.
One night, I was at a bar.
I had one too many drinks.
I had one too many drinks.
I got behind the wheel.
I got a cab.
A squirrel ran across the road.
A squirrel ran across the road.
I swerved.
The cab swerved.
I hit a guy.
The cabbie just missed a guy.
I wish I took a cab.
Thank goodness I took a cab.
You have the choice to save a life. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the Department of Transportation and the Ad Council.
Mr. and Mrs. Martin, welcome to the Teacher-Parent Conference. Thank you. I'm concerned about your son, Dylan.
Oh?
He's been telling his classmates that he has a giant waterfall in his backyard.
Really?
Oh, well, clearly you don't have a giant waterfall in your backyard.
No. We have 14.
Yeah, and he knows that.
Oh, yesterday he said that his backyard is 200,000 acres.
It's 230,000 acres.
Oh, that boy. Listen, thanks for bringing Dylan's under-exaggeration issue to our attention.
Oh, yeah, we'll talk to him this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Right after we hit the bike trails.
In your backyard.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota State Parks and Trails are practically in your own backyard. Odds are, there's one less than 30 miles away. For just $25 a year, your family has unlimited access to hike, bike, kayak, geocache, plus programs and activities. Discover Minnesota State Parks and Trails at exploreminnesota.com or call 1-888-
Yeah, we're back, folks. You're listening to Between Two Worlds Radio on the Z-Talk Radio Network. This is the Orange Blossom Special, played by Brad Moggy. And the one before that is actually four. We're actually wanted to honor the Canadian Armed Forces, the Métis, Aboriginal and Métis Veterans, called the Métis Prayer, the one done earlier. So, we're back, folks. My good friend Dale Haggerty from the Michif Historical and Cultural Preservation Society. Tonight we're talking about Métis people, our Métis Nation. Those of you who are being historically updated about what we do and who we are. And he's actually, like I said, Dale has a lot of knowledge in Canadian history, our culture history of the Métis Nation. And the interesting part of this that I want to share with you folks, I was asked to do a write-up, I guess I would say a column. I'm actually a member of the Bell Spirit magazine, and they asked me to do a column for them. And I decided to share. I wanted to share with you folks a little bit of historical journey, because I basically wanted to let people know who the Métis are. And working with Spirit, and then there's a man by the name of Ghost Wolf who came through. And between myself and himself, both of us wanted to share a story with you folks. So I'm going to ask Dale to be part of this, to listen to this part. It's going to be a little bit of a talk. It'll be for about 5 minutes. But I want to share this column with you folks because I want you guys to hear it. If you want to read the column, you can actually go to Bell's Spirit magazine. You can go actually to the there's actually a Facebook page. You can join their website, bellspirit.com, BELLESPIRIT.com, and you'll see the edition, the June's edition, and the title of this one's called On Walking the Path. And this is what I had said. There have been many times I have been asked to help an individual or group on behalf of the Indian people. More than often I've been hurt in that experience. I have elected to, therefore, as a spiritual elder of the Métis people, to share this little story with the many of you who have written to me, having to learn to deal with yourselves with a similar circumstance. After all, the reality road to enlightenment is not always easy. You know, it is our nature to give and to be compassionate for our people, even though as Métis we are often kicked and ridiculed for our mixed blood heritage by the very same bloodlines. It can be discouraging, and people like to stomp on a dream. I don't really know why, but I suppose it somehow seems to justify their own pain from the letting of their own dream slip through their fingers. People are people, and this earth is in many ways the hospital ship for God's lost souls. The pain all happened so long ago in their memory that they cannot remember when it was. They who lost their dream, all they can do is feel the pain of it, and heart pain, and the losing of dreams. Well, those things are not a cultural or racial matter. In fact, they are the very things that make us realize how like each other we are, and that there really is no difference. So my first question is, if you got hurt to trying to help someone else, why did you extend yourself in the first place? Were you expecting something in return for that deed? Were you doing it for good reasons of guilt? And were you manipulated into the act? Take a good look at yourself and just ask yourself why. Regardless of our heart commitment and respect for protocol, we must employ our own personal values and integrity when discerning relationships between ourselves and any outside entity. When we do something, do it because it feels right to you in the moment with no expectations. Don't expect rewards. Expect results. If someone asks you to join their cause, ask yourself why. Why would you? Why would they ask you? Be certain you are cognizant of your thoughts and actions. Own yourself. I, for one, will no longer lend my support to any individual or group claiming to be representing a native movement unless I first receive acknowledgement of the cause by the spiritual elders involved. I do so in order that I am not being fooled or swayed by my own emotions, and that I am able to discern the integrity of the individuals coming to me and their true purpose. To do otherwise leaves us open for back-talking and to be used as a pawn in games that need not even concern us or the reason we got involved. Hustlers come in all sizes, colors, shapes, and genders, even ages. As a Métis, we often find ourselves little more than holding the sacred ground between the worlds, while still having to make our own individual choices in these emotionally distraught times that have come upon all of us. We must strengthen ourselves as individuals, and yes, let us not forget, as the spiritual warriors against the malignant and malignment of consciousness that might deny us the right to stand upon equal ground as the children of one mother, Father God. This condition is passing. Its time has come, but ignorance is still alive and well amongst us, and the breath of the dragon is still upon the land. If one comes to you, be certain that they look upon you, and you look upon them as equal creations in the eyes of the Creator. Don't see them as Indian or Chinese or cute little Inca musician on the street corner. See the godliness in their eyes. It is the same godliness that is in your eyes. To do anything else is to slip into judgment. The disease of judgment and ignorance has not yet been lifted from the souls of mankind. The condition has just become subtler, more cunning, and exists in the silence where a generation ago it was out in the open, black and white for us to see. Racism does not necessarily mean hating someone's color anymore. Perhaps this is why the kids have blue and red and green hair, or shave their heads completely and wear those chains from their eyebrows. In society today, if you are different, if you think differently, then you are a target for anyone who suffers from the psychotic reactions of those still stuck in the differences and the past. The strange thing is I find it has always been this way. So many we haven't really progressed at all. Throughout the Americas and Canada as well as the world, it is a simple fact that a vast amount, in fact, in many places, the majority of the people are mixed blood. Look around you, and we find that here in the Americas, the Métis are the new silent majority. Even upon the reservations of North America and tribal regions of South America, this is the case even far into the outback and remote regions of the Himalayas and the Andes Mountains. Australia, New Zealand, literally in the lands, all over the lands, across the world. People are becoming, with each passing generation, a global race, for it is a fact that with the coming of this generation, we are the global race of beings and part of the divine plan to end the pain and ignorance of separation that has afflicted humanity for so long. As Métis, we have the genetic memory of our ancestors, and many of us perceive the world we live in through their ancient eyes, again by choice, and that takes courage and substance. We enjoy practicing of the ceremonials and the spirituality of our ancient heritage, for we are an unbroken line to the source from which we all came. We have become, in many instances, the bridges between two worlds. Often we are to be found at the cutting edge of evolutionary change and the expression of the humanity. We are paradigm breakers and the traditional believers in the sacredness of our Mother Earth. We are the children of one mother and one father, for we represent all the cultures in one embodiment. We are often all times ordinary people with a deep and special courage to live at the lonely edge of society. The light distractors are many of those who support our efforts are often less few. We seek spiritual unity while learning to find truth where it no longer exists to the naked eye. We are creating a new global society and changing the way that people think. We stand alone with Creator as our only ally at the abyss forever, the very chasm of change. For many like myself, there is only the red road before us, and there is no end in sight. It is a narrow path, but it is a pathway to forever. We did not all choose to live in this age of self-destruction, but some of us did, and we came back to help disassemble the tyranny and free the spirits of mankind and womankind. For destiny that dictates that we cannot allow ignorance to perpetuate. Many of us know we are the voice of all children, mankind crying for a vision and an universal returning to the natural way of living, the way of harmony and goodness, the way where spirit walks within the flesh as God-man and God-woman realized. If we as a humanity do not turn around the direction we have been headed, we will all perish, and all life forms upon this earth along with us. There are many. Perhaps at times it can seem that there are too many. People stand idly by criticizing and not participating in the effort to remedy the pain and suffering, but unfortunately and fortunately, there are those commonly accepted paradigm of greed, living in pollution, overpollution, and diseasement, and corrupt social environment. Many of us have made the conscious choice to correct our environmental and social imbalance. Fortunately, there are enough of us who have said that we can live the dream. as well as we can perpetuate the nightmare. And we have a choice. Our ancient wisdom that has stood for millions of years and survived through all civilizations remains with us today. This memory that is within all of us will work its medicine wherever we are needed and called upon by our Mother. The Earth Mother herself is directing us. The Father himself is calling us to the awakening. For as a Métis children, we know we have been here before in many expressions, playing out many roles in this human drama we call life. We know that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. As we represent all people and every culture, for the fibers of our light touch all that we have been as they stretch to the potentiality of all that we will become, or we are beings beyond time. We are in every level of life, from hobos to blue-collar workers to those in positions of great political and financial power. We are starving upon the reservations and composers of the music that spills forth from the airwaves of radio and television. We have standards living in this natural way that follow divine laws, and we are and must be addiction-free. We do not abuse our families, our women, our children, our elders, our prophets. We are a sovereign people who accept no handouts from the government. Optipamisawak. We are those who own themselves. This is what the old code means. Optipamisawak. We walk the beauty path, for this world was the miracle realized in the Creator's mind and birthed from the mother's womb. We perform our ceremonies, which are thousands upon thousands of years old, handed down from one generation to the next in the living covenant. Ceremonies that the grandfathers and grandmothers themselves taught us, so that the ways of the sacred chain we hold the highest regard of our ceremonies, and found the deeper connection to all life through touching all of life around us. We all have the right to express your dream as you see it re-emerging. Very simple rules. Honor everyone's wish to do likewise, and bringing no intentional harm to any living thing. We hold that sacred perspective of life and our connection to all and the cosmos, as many of us are remembering who we are and where we came from. Mother Earth has acknowledged us many times through ceremony, giving us direction and answers where there appeared no logical way of continuing the struggle against ignorance and corruption. Through ceremony, we have seen some strong warnings, and all along with that path, the prophecies left to us by our ancestors have proven themselves in time and time again. We as Earth people, as the Métis, are a people composed of a mixture of modalities, but we have a common belief, and as oneness in perception. We also understand that our technology as well as our spiritual strength is needed in this time to turn around the cycles of self-destruction that we have been born into. There are days for certain that the courage it takes to face tomorrow with optimism and seeing the beauty cannot be measured. It is a power that must come from within us, a power that cannot be conjured from the illusion without. We are creating a world that will exist without fear, for we know we are forever, and the laws of 7 generations are older than humanity itself. We are in the age of communication, and find that we are reawakening to the knowledge. This knowledge is changing us. Oftentimes it has been said, and I find it a great truth, that the only natural enemy to humanity is its own ignorance. We are in new renaissance. We are experiencing the awakening. It's the awakening. The quest for freedom and spiritual fulfillment is nature-based, and we are awakening to our ancient truths and wisdoms. The promise of the eternal Mother and Father of us all is a beacon before us as we bring our crippled fleet of broken angels home once again. Like migratory birds, we're following the frequency of source back home, and it is great mystery as to how this great miracle is unfolding. But when you know there is little need to seek explanations, does the bird ask why it is flying? We follow not the ways of patriarchal heresies that have led us down this road of suffering under the tyranny of those who surrendered their souls for temporal material comforts and false social status. For we acknowledge the God within all human beings, not the altered God. Oppression of human spirit and the enslavement of human race is a policy that has seen its time. Separatism has seen its final hour. We are emerging from the age of darkness, knowing that our cathedral is the earth herself, and our maps are in the stars that light the darkness in the heavens above us. Today we are finding the courage to cast off all fears, and we are once again stepping out and cataclysm and the advancement of consciousness in the new millennium. In many places upon our Mother Earth, where once there was a vacuum, the energies of ceremony are awakening. Once again, Mother is feeling the feet of her children dancing upon her, and she is awakening to the sounds of her songs as they sing their spirit out to the universe, as once was done in the good old days. We are Métis. We stand as a proud nation. And we are learning that Earth Mother has to say. She is teaching us what she desires, teaching us how she can be revered and protected. She is telling us what she needs and how to administer the cures for her and her children. There are those who oppose it, those who are stuck in the old realities of separatism and still follow that patriarchal regimes of tyranny and fear enslavement. We will love you in spirit of those limited attitudes. That will not change, although the ranges of time will wipe away your attitudes like the wind carves the mountains. We are about honor, integrity, and love in the image of the Father-Mother principle. I will tell you this, we are here to stay, for we are the earth, we are the human, and for we remember in our souls the original teaching that living God is living man. Learn to expand your realities and learn the oneness it all, or like the dinosaur. If you choose to remain in limitation, you will only be spoken about in campfires of our children as ghost stories. So as grandfather would say, Hantayo, clear the way, a new day has arrived, the purification is here, soon it will be a different world. If we are strong and remember our teachings, it will be one world, one heart, one song, one people. Let's go out and meet the day. We have an appointment with destiny. I am a Poptimistuak, one who owns himself. I am not alone. Together we are the nation without borders. What do you think, Dale?
Hey, put me to sleep. Yeah, it was good. There's lots of wisdom. Yeah.
It is. I find it important that we need to share that with everyone out there. That it's wonderful to talk about our history, but we need to talk about also our future for our children. Like you said, bring up the story about the future, and that we worry about our kids, not understand. If they don't follow their heart, we may lose those kids, and we don't want to lose them.
I was told once, we got to forget our past. We got to forget our past and move on, because of all the crap that was going on. And I say, wait, if we don't understand our past, how can we move on?
Yeah.
So my way of thinking is, we don't always have to bring up the past, but what we need to do is we need to understand the past.
Exactly.
And then we can move forward. And that's the wisdom of my words.
Yeah.
You have to understand where you come from before you know where you're going. There you go.
I like sharing the history to the kids and to the people about who we are. Even though we may have some negatives in the past, like you said, even like, for example, when they executed Louis Riel and quite a few men that actually supported him, and then, even to this day, I'm like you were telling me a while back that all the relatives that are related to Riel and Gabriel Dumont, there's still a bounty on these guys. There's a bounty in the family, and that bounty hasn't been lifted yet.
No, I don't think so.
And I couldn't believe it when I heard that, so I did some research, and that bounty still exists.
Yeah. Yeah, there is.
I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, we'll just shoot 7th generation of Gabriel Dumont's family.
Yeah,
we'll just take them
there
out.
Was, how they take care of the bounty is they did it for the children.
Yes.
For example, in my case, my family, how they came in, the government came in, and I'm going to say it's the government, came in and seized all the kids and sent them to, sent my mom to a residential convent, and my other aunt went to another one, and then my other aunt went to another one, which, ended up that that's how they got even with the family, for participating in the actual resistance, and that's how they got you as for your bounty. And I probably were not the only family that was affected. We're talking lots of families that were infected. Was to that day of eternity, of them coming in and doing that to many families.
Yeah.
That was their way of getting even.
Yeah, it was. Anyways, I want to thank you, my friend, for coming on the show. I know that people in the chat room really enjoy themselves. They thought it was great. Now, how can anybody reach you?
Well, we do have a website. It's called www.michifmétismuseum.biz, and you can get a hold of us through that way. They can get a hold of you, Derrick, through your radio program, which you can pass the information on. I'm always available for talks, and I I am a teacher and an instructor, and I do occasionally, once in a while, go into the schools and talk about our history and share, and so you can get a hold of, like I said, through your radio program here, and there you go.
Oh,
look at the websites. The website is quite interesting. We have some of the artifacts on display, but we do bring in the presentations of to schools and wherever we are needed.
Yeah.
Set up a display.
Well, you and I will be doing something like that when you come up this way, and we're going to work on getting more involved with the community because we've got to be busier this year.
Yeah, I have this dream of putting on a little television program of talking and showing some of the actual artifacts of who we are and how they were made and what they were, and but we'll be working on that through the summer, Derrick and I. Yeah. So if anybody has any ideas, please get a hold of Derrick through his radio program, and let's see what we can do.
Now, on the website, we also have we do have a video that we are selling on the DVD. It's Voice of the Métis Elders. It's the first one that was made about 20 years ago, and we're working on part 2 now, 20 years later. So we're going to see what happens now since the first one came out. 20 years ago? No, how many 20 years ago? 15 years ago. So feels like longer probably. And it'd be great. So we're going to be working on that. If you guys want to order that video, let us know. Just go on the website, www.themichifmétismuseum.org. And it's .org, not biz.
.org, that's right too.
Yeah, you got a biz. I got the org.
I got a biz, yeah.
So anyways, folks, it's been wonderful to have you guys listen to us. And in the meantime, in between time, another edition of Between Two Worlds Radio. I want to thank Dale Haggerty and the Michif Métis Museum and the board the board members actually for their support, and say a big shout out to Earl Belcourt and Tom LaSalon, who's actually just moved to Saskatchewan, and a big shout out to our good friend, his wife, Little Dale Haggerty, because there's two Dales, Dale and Dale, Big Dale, Little Dale. Anyways, take care, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, Derrick, for having me on.
Okay, talk to you then, guys.
Say good night to everybody.
Night, folks.
Listening to Z-Talk Radio, the #1 choice for music, sports, news, and talk radio. So keep that dial locked to ztalkradio.com.